Welcome back. I hope you've met some nice people in the break, or you've been able to Google something about the US election back home. We'll start this session by answering the last question at slido.com, and I will reveal all the results before we go home today. So the last question I want you to answer is, what will be the most important elements to focus on to build offshore wind as a new industrial venture for Norway? And you can answer whatever you want. Finance, policies, supply industry, whatever. And you can do it many times. So we will make a word cloud to sum up your answers. But now, we are going to move over to the industry. How are we going to move from dreams and ambition to concrete projects, profit, and jobs? To get a real understanding about that, we need to include the supply industry, and they are here with us today. Birger Haraldseid, who has been the project manager for this Hywind 2020 project, he will moderate this session, and with him here in the audience, here at stage, he had with him Bjørke, the managing director for Norway of Simens Gamesa, Renewables, and Stangeland, CEO of Norsea Group. In addition to that, we have two guests contributing from Oslo. It's Lars Henrik Hosøy, he's the business development manager of Aibel, and Dugstad, director of Norwegian Energy Partners. So now we're doing a new concept, live on stage, live on panel. But here you are, welcome.
Thank you. This is going to be interesting. My background is actually working with supply chains, so this is one of my favorites. Tina Bru has been very clear on one thing. The driver from the political standpoint is to build a supply chain rather than producing more energy for the Norwegian grid. I think we all agree on that, but how to do it? It's not that straightforward. So part of the intent is to transform and build on our current petroleum and maritime heritage and competence. That's also been clear. So the question is actually, what will it take to actually make this happen? So we have asked these 4 key players, which are in different roles in the levels of the supply chain, and have different roles, but they have all experience with the supply chain. What will it take, actually? So we have asked them to give a short presentation first about where they are in the supply chain and where they see the opportunities. And Bjørke, you are the man on the top of the supply chain in many ways, because Simens Gamesa is the world-leading supplier of turbines. Ben?
Thank you. So, Mayor and the conference, thank you for inviting me. I'm so glad that there's a few people left here, because this is the second time I'm holding a presentation in the last few weeks in front of an audience. So it's good that you all didn't go home. At the same time, I'm happy that we have some people on Teams and Zoom or wherever you're logging in from, that we can use that kind of technology to reach out in these special times. All right. Let there be no doubt, in this conference, well, so the presentation is not on. That's fine enough. I mean, in this conference room, in this city, in the Norwegian oil and gas industry, the level of competence, experience, and expertise in making things work offshore is just extraordinary. It is world class. We can build on this as we transform onshore and offshore industry, wind industry, to ensure continued value creation. Is it still on? No. Fine enough. That's fine. I'll just do my intro without it. Where did I stop? Yeah. We can build on this experience from the oil and gas industry into the onshore and offshore wind industry to ensure the continued value creation, and while we at the same time reduce emissions and meeting our very ambitious climate targets. But let's be honest, if we are to succeed in the wind industry, we must do things differently than what we have learned in the petroleum industry. The offshore wind industry, and especially the floating part of it, as we have seen many times today, depends heavily on government subsidies, and this artificial life of support cannot continue forever. So if you want to make a difference in this industry, there's only one way to succeed. That is to continue to keep people safe, while at the same time bring costs down. It's all about the cost. So, in a nutshell, the oil and gas industry is about developing and designing components that can last offshore for a lifetime with no repair. Process-wise, cost has been driven by national and project-specific criteria. And we all know that the industry has a history of quite high return on investment. While the wind industry is about the shift from fossil to renewables, it is first, and as I said, and foremost, about reducing cost. And we must not be naive. Return on investment will be just as important here, albeit somewhat smaller, for national and international investors as it has been in the petroleum industry. So we must be willing to change the mentality from this one-off, sometimes over-engineering and super profit approach to focus on 4 main items. And that is industrialization, it is standardization, it is scalability, and it's, again, about cutting cost. And in this perspective, as we have seen several times before today as well, the levelized cost of energy is the most important factor. And you have to ask yourself, where do you see yourself in that function or in that equation? And how can you contribute to lowering it? So when you leave this conference today, there are 3 important points that I want you to remember. Continue the focus on EHS. Understand the levelized cost of energy, and then understand how you can reduce and contribute to reducing the levelized cost of energy, whether it is on the technology side, it's on the finance side, or if you are a government, on the framework side. So that was my introduction. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ben. And now we will take in from Oslo, Lars Henrik Hosøy. He is working with renewables in Aibel. Aibel is actually one of the biggest suppliers to the offshore wind industry in Norway, with current good contract portfolio.
Thank you for that introduction. I trust that you are seeing my presentation now.
Yes, we are.
That's good. I was asked to also give some words in terms of where we are in the supply chain, and also the transition we have made from the oil and gas industry. So I will also keep that as a focus in my brief presentation now in the introduction. And Aibel is primarily within offshore wind, focusing on the transmission side for the bottom fixed project, meaning the HVDC substations and AC substation projects. In addition to potentially floating substations in the more long-term perspective, we are also working towards the floating turbine foundations itself. Last but not least, we are also covering and providing O&M services related to the assets that we are delivering within this market. Our scope of services is to take the role as a complete EPC contractor within our scope of work, and we have the in-house capabilities to perform all stages of a project development, all the way from early phase studies and concept developments throughout complete EPC execution. Our ongoing projects within offshore wind is for the larger projects now, currently ongoing in UK on the Dogger Bank development led by Equinor and SSE, and on Dolphin 5 together with Keppel Fels, we are delivering the onshore and offshore converter platform for the Dolphin 5 project for TenneT. In Dogger Bank, we have multiple projects for the different stages of the project development, and we are about to deliver the first HVDC converter platform in UK in 2023, and the Dolphin 5 in Germany will be delivered in 2024. We started working towards the offshore wind market all the way back from 2010. And for us, it was all about to leverage the already existing experience and capabilities we had from the oil and gas industry and utilize the competence we had in terms of managing large and complex projects. And there is a lot of aspects and capabilities within that range, but both contractually in the design phase, procurement phase, how to design constructible solutions, how to operate with and manage the logistics of the projects, and also, as Ben mentioned, in terms of safe and reliable operations and the focus on HSE. In addition, we also utilized our experience within marine competences and how to also design installation-friendly solutions when entering this market. I think that was just a brief introduction on my side, and looking forward to the discussions later on. Thank you.
Thank you. And then moving over to the oldest oil field services company in Norway, Norsea Group, that was founded in 1965, before we actually got the first license out, Stangeland, and they've also entered into offshore wind. Jon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, we're old, but we're forward-leaning. That's important. Yeah. Just a brief overlook of who we are and what we have developed into over more than 50 years, starting with oil and gas, as you said. Today we are present at about 14 locations, ranging from Hamburg in the south and all the way up to Polarbase in the north. Primary business, of course, being oil and gas logistics and infrastructure to support the oil and gas activities and logistics. But we're also in Esbjerg, besides of Norway, with our supply bases, supporting Total, which again is the majority operator on the Danish sector. And as we all know, Esbjerg is an extremely active port for when it comes to export of wind components. We're owned by the Wilhelmsen Group, which again are present somewhere in the high 2,000 in numbers of locations, anything ranging from large port terminals to smaller call it agent offices. So we have a global presence through our owners. And as you also see, we have two local owners, Eidesvik from Bømlo and Møgster from Stavanger, owning us. When we look at the map, we can see that we are obviously present all around where it will be relevant to do any ocean space activity on the Norwegian continental shelf and also into Denmark. So that's what we want to capitalize on when we say we want to go into offshore wind. We started up actually quite a few years ago. The very first contact with the offshore wind that we had was when we actually used our supply base in Dugstad to put together the first high wind test demo turbine. And the second project, as you see on the left, was at the Storbase when we had the high wind Scotland project. And that's an area where we want to continue to be, to support the industry through our ports and logistics systems. handling, mobilization work. We have also established a new company called Elevon, which is owned partly by Norsea Group and partly by the Wilhelmsen Group, one of the daughter companies in the Wilhelmsen Group, ALS. That is to provide global projects, logistics to the offshore wind industry or to the wind industry in general. There will be a lot of components, large size components that will be moved around this planet, and it needs to be established efficient systems. We're into substation maintenance. We hold a long-term contract with Tennet, who owns these yellow platforms in German sector. So we carry out all the maintenance and modification works on a total of 8 platforms today. Working together with Wilhelmsen Ship Management, which again is coming from a traditional ship management system and operates more than 200 ships on a global basis today. We provide technicians, personnel through the Wilhelmsen Ship Management system. And just lately now it was announced that our owner were buying into the Edda Wind vessels. All this is being supported by the Norsea Group and our owners and a number of companies ranging from pure operational companies to digital companies. So we believe that we are in a very good... Should I repeat everything or is it okay?
It's okay.
Oh, that's good. So we believe we're in a very good position to be a part of the supply chain, not only for the North Sea, but eventually also on a global basis. Looking at the supply chain, just to send one message, obviously there is a lot of activities throughout the whole supply chain for establishing an offshore wind park. There is a lot of space here for the Norwegian supplier industry to find its way, whether they're selling products or services. We are primarily selling services, so we need local presence. We can't just build something and ship it off to the client. We have to be there every day. So that's why our message today is very, very clear. If we are going to succeed as Norway, as the Stavanger region, to take a position and to develop this market, we need to make certain that we get a multitude of developers and wind park owners and operators, energy producers, located primarily in the Stavanger region. I think that is a prerequisite. It was a prerequisite for the success the supplier industry have had developing itself on the back of the oil and gas industry. I think this is the key to it. So I'm hoping for the upcoming license rounds that we will see not only 1 or 2 giants, but several players coming into this market, so we have a diverse multitude of customers to talk to develop our supplier industry. I think that's a prerequisite, and it's going to be very, very important for this business to grow the way we hope it to grow. So that was my introduction.
Thank you, John. There is certainly more to Norsea than we sort of realize on a day-to-day basis, so thank you for that. Now to a very important sector and a very important angle to it, because even if we see that it will be licensed or open for licensing in the new year, it will take some years before the factual contracts with the industry are in place. Export will be extremely important. Norway has a unique organization that is a private-public partnership to promote export of energy technology, Norwep. And to introduce John, there is a short film, so if you can roll that, please. And John will come in after that from Oslo.
Generations of mastering extreme ocean conditions has given Norwegian suppliers a unique engineering and marine competence.
Offshore wind energy really started in the North Sea. That is because there were good governments that really liked those type of technologies.
We are proud in Norway of the creativity and innovation of the offshore energy industry.
There's a new revolution coming using floating technologies for offshore wind. That will allow us to go further offshore, hunt better wind speeds in deeper waters, and reduce the environmental footprint further.
Our skilled supply chain is creating innovative and efficient cost reduction solutions and better services. Norway has value to add in offshore wind. We're open to collaboration, and the Norwegian offshore industry's strong reputation in health and safety standards makes us a trusted partner in this global development. Norwegian offshore expertise, taking offshore wind further.
And then we have John on the line. Can you hear us?
Hello there, I can hear you.
Yeah, so tell us more about what you're doing and how you are envisioning that we can take a place in the world of wind energy and have already maybe through the Norwep network.
Thank you, Birger. That's very kind of you. I think the film that we showed in the beginning here indicates the work that we are doing. We are promoting the guys who are with you in Stavanger to the international clients in offshore wind. So we are taking the Norwegian competence with us, and we are also trying to tell the clients about how the Norwegian competence can be utilized to solve their challenges in offshore wind. Now, we are talking about how the Norwegian supply chain will be able to prepare even better to take a larger stake in this industry. And I think listening to Ben and also to Lars, Henrik and John, I think it's all about being competitive. Ben mentioned cost, of course, but also in terms of being able to adapt the technology that we have been developed over many years offshore and in the maritime industry for offshore wind. And it's about innovation. It's about, as Ben said, industrialization. And it's about creating new business models to be able to scale in volume to the volumes that we will see in offshore wind. So I think that in order to make this industry ready for the global market, more of the said has to be done in terms of preparing Norwegian industry for adapting technology and business models to be competitive in this market. So it's all about preparation, but it's also about persistence. I mean, in the beginning, when we came to this market, no one believed that companies from Norway with a base in oil and gas would be persistently searching for opportunities in offshore wind. Now, we have to convince the world that we are and that we will be there for the long time. So with that, I think the work we've been doing has been introduced, and also some words about what we believe is necessary to compete in this industry.
Thank you. There will be a gap between now and 2026 or 27 before the tangible contracts will be signed. Where are the export opportunities, or what kind of opportunities do you see in the market up until that time? Jon? John?
I mean, we see opportunities every day. We just created a database of 900 projects on a global scale in various stages of development. And of course, some of those have an FID, and some of them have been chosen in certain support systems in various countries. And I mean, we shouldn't be waiting, because the opportunities are already there on the bottom fixed side, of course, and floating will follow. And I think in Europe, in particularly in the UK sector, in Germany, in Denmark, in the Netherlands, in France, but also in Poland, which is a market coming up, as well as in Ireland a bit later, and in Asia, particularly in Taiwan, where some of the companies present has already been engaging, and some Norwegian companies have won sizable contracts. So I think there are lots of opportunities now, and that we need to be acting ASAP.
Thank you. Jon Stangeland, what do we need to see in place to be able to not lose this picture of opportunity that we have? and the gap we have until 26 or 27?
Well, I think that several things. Obviously, we have seen good examples today from Aibel to you have all the supplier, the shipping industry is already taking their position on the global market. There is obviously no contracts for SOV vessels in Norway available in the foreseeable future, so you have to win them abroad. It's happening every day, so I think we are in a good position to build blocks by blocks. My point being that when you need the domestic industry also is to cater for all the smaller supplier industry. There was no supplier industry in Stavanger when the oil and gas industry came to Stavanger in the first place. But see what had happened because you had the headquarters there. So I think that what we're doing today, shipping has always been international. We've had to chase the jobs, the time charter contracts in an international market. So we know how those system works, but we're delivering on that. But if you're going to build a service industry, you need to also, either send people out, start to learn, probably lose some money in the beginning. Hopefully, we'll make some money at in the long end, and then hope for a domestic market that can really boost your capabilities. But I think there is a tremendous number of opportunities out there, not very, very big in Norway right now, but there is sufficient to start working, and I think that's what we need to do, and that's what we have done at least.
So you think that having a domestic marketplace or training ground will help us tremendously?
Clearly. I mean, again, going back to the similarity with the development of the oil industry, there was different times then, I recognize that, in terms of competition and more open market. But there's no doubt in my mind that the closeness to the decision makers who developed this, who were operating this, was an important factor for developing the competence, knowledge, winning the contracts, and building on back of that. We didn't know how to build platforms, how to operate supply ships, but we knew how to operate fishing vessels in the North Sea. We knew how to build tankers and vessels in Norway. It was really over a very short period that we converted because we had a domestic market to train and learn. It's going to be the same here.
And then a question first to Lars Henrik and then to Jon Dugstad. Has it been experienced as a hampering factor or a strength, the experience and heritage you have from the oil and gas industry?
I can start giving a response to that one. And it's been a real strength for us when entering into this market 10 years ago. It was also a different situation where it was a less mature industry on offshore wind. So the offshore experiences we brought with us into this market was then positively perceived when coming from the oil and gas. But also what's been mentioned here earlier today, we also see that we, in addition to demonstrating that experience, we need to adapt to a new industry and also learn the mechanisms and industry-specific drivers for the offshore wind industry as well. And in parallel, when we now see within offshore wind that it's also even higher requirements to industry-specific experience and references, a whole market would definitely support that development in the supply chain from our side. As we saw with the early movers market 10 to 15 years ago, and the role they are playing on an international level today.
Jon Dugstad.
I think when I started working in this industry some 10 years ago, up until 5 years ago, everyone told us that, Norwegian companies, no, you must be too expensive. Because you're based in the oil and gas industry. Now, I think companies like Aibel, Nexans, Fred Olsen, and also others, smaller suppliers, have all proven that it really doesn't matter and that we are able to get costs down, both in the oil and gas industry as well as in offshore wind, to a level at which we are competitive. And as of today, as the oil majors are engaging in this industry to a high degree as well, we do see that there is a certain demand for that offshore understanding, both in Europe, but also in new markets in which they do not have the same extent of offshore oil and gas industry, so that offshore and maritime experience is highly sought after, both by these oil and gas majors on a global scale, but also by local content players or local players who are looking for global competence to add to their local knowledge. So I think today oil and gas offshore maritime experience is highly appreciated in the industry, and not only from Norway, but we've seen that the Dutch dredgers, if you like, have developed a very big franchise in offshore wind already.
Ben, what is your comment to this? Is it a hampering factor with oil and gas, or do we seem to be adaptable to add more value to the offshore wind industry?
Well, I see it in two ways. I think we have companies that has showed that they have been able to adapt, for certain with Aibel. But I think also at the other side, when we now are establishing a home market, it's important that we look at the framework, that we design an international-based framework, that we don't do something that is just special for Norway, because then we're gonna start to increase the cost by doing something special that is not that we don't see in other markets. And also I think for some companies maybe that could be stuck in what I said in my introduction, that could be stuck in this very high level of almost over-engineering of components, and you need to come out of that mentality and have a different focus, because this is something that needs to be standardized. It needs scalability, and that is the way that you can succeed if you are to come into the supply chain somewhere.
You sitting on top of the supply chain may have seen that different companies have done this in different ways. One observation I can share is that I've seen companies that is trying to combine oil and gas business within the same company structure have a challenge with that, because then they will, when oil and gas booms, they are willing to pay more, they can pay more, and people will be gone from that wind area. Is that a challenge? They don't seem to be persistent, interested enough in this.
Yeah, I think at least one challenge could be, what we see is that maybe the organizations that are most dynamic and flexible are the ones that are able to move fast in the wind industry, and they are the ones that succeed. So if you have a lot of headcounts, a lot of people that you need to involve in every single action and decision that you are to take, then you might lose ground. So I think to establish and construct a lean organization is something that's going to be important in order to succeed, and that also is something that might differ from what you're used to in the oil and gas industry.
Because that is something we've seen that Norsea is doing now with Elvon and NSG Wind, which is specialized organizations. We have seen Aker doing that. You haven't done that yet in Aibel, but the majority of work you have in Hosøy for the moment is related to wind. What do you think about that, Henrik?
No, I agree to a large extent that you need to adapt, and the organization needs to develop into a new way of working, and also to understand the differences within the two industries. You are correctly pointing out that we have not done it in that manner, but still we have flexible as one of our values in the company, and we have been continuously focusing on how to build up an organization within our team to focus on these offshore wind developments, and also how to get that understanding and get that experience that is needed to operate in this market.
Jon Dugstad, what in your experience, because you have probably seen companies that are trying to ride on both horses, as well as those go all in and are dedicated. Is there a difference in results or approach?
I think it's a very interesting questions actually, and a good thing we have Aibel here as well as NSG Wind or Norsea Group, because they might have slightly different business models. But I agree with Ben. I mean, it's a rather fast pace in the offshore wind industry, which means that you need to be quickly moving from project to project and have, you know, people in various parts or various markets regionally across the world. And I think that in terms of producing a higher volume, not so much the substations at which Aibel is taking part, but all other areas within the offshore wind industry might, you know, produce more volume. So it's industrialization, it's scalability, as Ben said. And I think to be able to adapt the business model to offshore wind, it might be difficult for some companies to include both legs in the same company, if you like, or on the same body. So business-wise, it might be a better idea for some of the Norwegian suppliers, at least, to have, you know, separate entity to develop their business within offshore wind. Yes.
Stangeland?
Yeah, just a short one. I think that if you look at it closely, what are we actually doing with these companies? I mean, building a platform is more similarities than there are differences between an oil and gas platform and a substation. Lifting in wind components is not that different from lifting in subsea components that we do on daily. So if you look at the similarities, there's quite a lot of similarities. There are some differences, but a lot of similarities. Having said that, I think that it's important, and especially for companies like us that who are in a change mode, is where we're going to switch into also taking part in this market. I think you need focus, or you need diversity in the management to handle that. You need somebody who have focus on the wind market. You need somebody who have focus on the traditional offshore oil and gas market, and you need eventually to be willing to put money and resources behind backing it and specializing into the different segments. It's kind of difficult to work with oil and gas customers in the morning and wind customers in the afternoon. That could be a bit confusing, but in the beginning you might have to do that. But then eventually you need to specialize more, I think.
Okay, so sliding into round off, if each of you had to give the Norwegian politicians one piece of advice, if the intent is, as they say, we would like to repeat the story or the adventure we've had in connection with oil and gas, building an oil and gas supply chain. What is your single advice to them if they want to get on with that? Lars Henrik?
Yeah, I think my single advice, if I should pick only one, I would recommend that we focus on learning on the experiences made in other markets within offshore wind and the mechanisms that could give valuable support when we are developing our own model here in Norway, and learn from that process instead of potentially trying to build a unique and own model for our own market.
Thank you. Dugstad?
I mean, since it looks like the government is changing to support single industries, and this might be one of them, I think the government should listen to the industry, of course, and I think that the support that the industry can have in terms of creating space to prepare for this new market and to, you know, adapt what we do have from the offshore oil and gas / maritime industries to offshore wind would benefit the industry in many ways. And then we can, of course, discuss what kind of support that might be, but I think I'll leave that to another discussion.
Ben?
I think if you look at Norway and the potential that we have offshore, you can see that, well, there's a few gigawatt that we can do bottom fixed, and then we're in the floating market immediately. If you compare the Norwegian market then with other markets that are also looking into the floating market, they have maybe 10 gigawatts of bottom fixed before they are entering the floating market. Meaning that there is a window right now for Norway to take that pole position immediately. So if I was to give a recommendation, that is to keep speed and momentum and take the opportunity window that is there right now. And there's no time to lose. There's one other point with keeping speed, and that is about the electrification of the oil platforms. For every year that we lose from electrification, the benefit of doing that from a cost or from a financial perspective is worsening. So speed and momentum is the most important right now.
A little bit of the same. I think that I give very good credit to the politicians we have today, because they have obviously now put their minds to this, both within offshore wind as well as within hydrogen. There's been some lack of firm, concrete objectives and support and funding of it. It will probably come. But I think the interest that the politicians are showing today is absolutely praiseworthy. It's very good. The fact that we have our mayor sitting here the whole day and listening carefully and making notes all the time is a good proof of that. So I think we're on the right track, and we need to stay firm. If we believe in these exponential growth curves that's coming, Norway needs to get a grab of that market, and we need a domestic market, and we need a multitude of players in that market, located in the Sandnes. That was about it.
Thank you, and I'll use the liberty to give my piece as well. I think there are two things. Yes, we need some commercial market size with the fields that are going to be announced now, but we also need test and demo, and to build competence like in Egersund. Thank you.
Thank you, Birger, and thank you to the suppliers represented by Ben, John, and Lars Henrik. Thank you. I have to say that I took note of what you said, John, that there is a lot of opportunities in selling products and services in offshore wind. But I hope we all took notice of that we need to secure developers and project owners in this region if this is going to continue and in developing into an offshore wind region.